again, welcome to the session. I'm Spencer. I am a volunteer with our organization. Our organization is actually almost completely comprised of volunteers. So we have a really passionate and devoted network through North Star Rotary. So I think that helps make our program stand out. Just to call that out immediately. But thanks again for joining us. I am actually going to pass it off to Eric and Elaine to introduce themselves first. So you get the chance to hear from some of our leadership. They'll talk a little bit more later. And then just throughout the program today, feel free to interact, leave any questions that you have in the chat, and then we'll get to them at the end. So Eric, Elaine, I'll pass it off to you first.
Yeah, there we go. My name is Eric Johnsrud. I am the past chair of North Star, and I have another role of responsible officer right now with North Star, but I've been involved in youth exchange off and on for the last 40 years as a Rotarian. My daughter was an exchange student to Spain back in 2013, 2014. I'll pass that off to Elaine next. Elaine Bauman, our current chair.
Hi, as Eric said, I'm Elaine Bauman, and I'm the current chair. And I have been mostly involved up to this point as a youth exchange officer with my club, and also working with the short-term exchange programs, both the family to family and the camp parts of the short-term exchange. So if you have questions about the short-term exchange, I might be the person answering that for you. So now I'm going to turn it back to Spencer because we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So, like I said, my name's Spencer. I'll walk us through a little bit of the slideshow, but I want to give Lindsay and Fatouche an opportunity to share a little bit about their experience later on, and then I'm going to pass it back off to Elaine at the end. I am a country officer with the program. I represent some of our Baltic countries, including Poland, Lithuania, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. And then I also help coordinate our alumni program called Rotex. So I've been using that email to communicate with a lot of you. So just in case you do get an email from them, Rotex is a part of the organization. So Lindsay and Fatuma, go for it. I'll let you introduce yourselves.
I'm Lindsay Lawrencer. I went to Spain in 2023, 2024, and I'm also part of Rotex now.
And she's on our board.
Oh yeah, and I'm on the Rotex leadership with the outbound candidates.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Fatuma. I was an inbound student 2023, 2024. And a lot of people get confused by that. So I came here as an exchange student. I was outbound to the US, so I was an inbound last year. Oh.
Yeah. Great. Thanks. So we're going to start with just the basics. A lot of you may have never heard of Rotary before, or maybe you've heard about our youth exchange organization, but you're not aware of what Rotary International is. So Rotary International is a global humanitarian organization, and we're not a small group. We are represented by almost 1.5 million people across the world. And we're broken up into clubs that either are represented by your city location or there may be several clubs in one city. And Rotary's efforts are focused in a myriad of different ways that aren't listed on the screen, but primarily on creating world peace, fighting disease, supporting education, protecting the environment, providing clean water, sanitation, hygiene, and the list really goes on. And we do this primarily through community service events that the clubs host and put on, and then also through philanthropy as well. One effort that you may have already heard about that Rotary was involved in or has been, heavily involved in since the 1980s is the eradication of polio. That is something that I think Rotary really prides itself on because they were significantly involved in public awareness, vaccination drives, etc. And that was a kind of the pride and joy of Rotary, one thing that they accomplished. So what is North Star Rotary? So the Youth Exchange Organization sits within Rotary International itself. And then you can kind of think of the districts of the Youth Exchange Organization like you would think of like a school district. So our school district, quote unquote, is districts 5950 and 5960, which you don't need to remember, but we're made up of most of the southern half of Minnesota and western Wisconsin. And oh, whoopsie. And we're by the numbers, actually one of the largest youth exchange districts in the world. We usually exchange about 30 to 60 students every year. And the age group for that is 15 to 19. So you have to be at least 15 years old by the time that you leave for exchange. You can be no older than 19 before the date that you leave on exchange as well. You can turn 19 while you're on exchange. For example, if you do a gap year, but no older than that. So the actual exchange experience, and for the purposes of this slide and for most of this PowerPoint explanation, you'll hear a lot about the year-long experience, and we'll kind of talk mostly about that experience. We do have some information that Elaine will talk about later on about the short-term summer-long program as well. So I just wanted to clarify that if there's any confusion about that. But the way that the exchange experience works is district to district. So North Star, our district, will exchange one student to or multiple students to another district in exchange for the same amount of students from that district. So for example, when I wanted to exchange to Poland in 2018, 2019, Poland is one district, one youth exchange district. So I could have been placed in any local Rotary club and hosted by a local Rotary club there in exchange for one Polish student in the United States or through North Star Rotary. You'll, like I said, be hosted by a local Rotary club. And I think I mentioned earlier that Rotary clubs are usually associated with like a city. So for example, Stillwater Rotary Club, or would exchange with Madrid Rotary Club, and vice versa. And you would be hosted by that club. They would be responsible for several different aspects of your exchange experience, like getting you host families, setting up your registration with your high school, et cetera, et cetera. And then as part of the exchange experience, this is a really full-blown assimilation into that country. You attend high school for the entire year. You live with the host family. You develop an understanding for the language. And typically, the Rotary experience, you're placed with 3 different host families throughout the year. And the reason for this is because no one family is the same. And the idea is to give you different lifestyle experiences and cultural experiences with different families. So you'll be hosted usually, you'll change host families typically every 2 to 3 months, uh, depending on availability and when the timing works out best. So with that said, I actually want to toss it over to Lindsay and Fatuma to talk a little bit about their experience. So I think Lindsay, you're up first.
Okay, again, I'm Lindsay Lawrencer, went to Spain in 2023, 2024. These are photos that were uploaded in here last year, I think. But first I want to talk about like what led me to going on exchange. And that started with me having exchange students in my Spanish class. And I thought it was so cool that people could come to the US and leave behind their life back home and their family and friends and come to a new country for a school year and learn a new language and different experiences where I was like, I want to do that. And then I talked to my family, and they were surprisingly on board with it. I did not think they would be. Um, and I looked into all different programs, and Rotary just seemed like the best option. It was also the cheapest option, which I feel like is a big factor when doing exchange. Um, some of then how exchange has impacted me would be, well, now I'm living in Rochester, going to college in Mayo Clinic at Mayo Clinic. One of the interview questions for this college was, what was something you've done in your life that got you out of your comfort zone? And I was able to talk about exchange and going to Spain for 10 months and how that experience like changed my life. Yeah, let me talk about some of these photos because that's like probably my favorite part. This first photo is my third host family, my dad in the back, and then my best friend Violet. Second photo is my best friend Violet and me. We made Thanksgiving dinner for my host family because Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays, and they don't have it in Spain. And then I was in Alicante, Spain, and this street in the third photo is like one of the main pictures you'll see if you look up Alicante. It's kind of like their thing. And so that's that photo. I feel like this was really short, but I have talked enough. So I'm gonna pass it on to Fatuma.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, I'm Fatuma again. I was inbound to the US 2024-25. And starting with what inspired me to do Rotary. Growing up, I always watched, me and my siblings in Uganda always watch like Western movies and like Nickelodeon, like Disney movies and stuff like that. And I always wanted to come to the US and see if it's real or not. So my uncle was a Rotary president for one of the Rotary clubs back home. And my cousin had applied to the program. And my aunt told my mom about the program, and we're like, oh, this seems cool. So we applied for it. And then, like, a couple months later, I got the emails back from North Star about my scholarship and coming to Minneapolis. I had never heard of Minnesota. I did not know anything about Minnesota. So then we started looking it up, and I was very excited. And then in August of 2024 is when I came. And I was so tired from like the whole 24 hours almost on a plane. But yeah, I was excited that I made it to the US and was ready to start the adventure. And some of my highlights were, the first thing I always think about like during my earlier months during on exchange was my first host family took me to my first concert at the state fair. The second day I was here, we went to see Becky G. And when they told me about it before I left home, I was like, oh, I get to see Becky G. I didn't think about how tired I would be. I was so jet lagged, but that's one of my highlights, definitely. And I went back to the state fair this year again, and I was like, wow, I still remember this so well. And I went to Roosevelt High School and I did theater there. That was one of my highlights too. I did cheer as well for basketball season. It was cold, but it was fun, and I met a lot of nice people in cheer. And then winter was one of my highlights because I had never like seen snow or like experienced this like level of coldness. Because compared to back home, the coldest it gets is like 65 degrees, and then it gets really hot some days. So I had never seen snow. I was excited about that. But then I had not, in my mind, I had not thought about how cold it was gonna be. So when I got here and they told me that the lakes freeze, I was like, wait, wait a minute. So that was shocking, but that was a highlight. And then over spring break, my third host family, we went to Florida, and that was fun. in general, just the traveling that I did on exchange was a highlight because at the end I did the East Coast trip and I had never left Uganda before my exchange year, and I did a lot of traveling in 10 months, and that was exciting. The impact, I feel like my exchange has had a lot of like a major impact and like changed my life in a lot of ways. Right now, I'm still in the Twin Cities. I'm in Minneapolis, and I'm going to college at Normandale. So that's very big for me that I got to stay here and go to school. And my knowledge of the world generally like broadened. Like I didn't know a lot of things until I got here. And yeah, I just exchange has impacted me in a good way. Yep.
Thanks. Appreciate it. If there's any questions for Lindsay or Fatuma, or I'm happy to, answer any questions about the exchange experience, being that we all three went on it. Feel free to ask any questions about that at the end. Elaine, off to you. Oh, I think you're muted yet.
Yeah, turn on the microphone. So you've heard a lot about the long-term exchange and how impactful it is on their lives. And that the long-term exchange program itself costs about $8,000. And we are an all-volunteer organization. So that money goes to paying, well, the cost includes the round-trip airfare, accident, sickness, personal liability insurance, all the orientation sessions and materials, and Rotary blazers and pins. The costs that you need to take care of yourself are passport, visa, or resident permit cost, consulate visits. Many of the consulates are in Chicago, so you may need to make a trip to Chicago to get your visa. You may need to get additional vaccinations and inoculations based on the country you go to. And of course, you'll want to have some gifts and personal items to take, and any local travel that you have while in country. And there is financial assistance available if needed. And you can apply for that. Let's go on to the next page. Okay, so the applications, the deadline is November 15th. So it's 2 weeks from yesterday. And have it on good authority. And Fatuma and Lindsay, you can bear this out. It'll take about 2 hours or a little bit more to fill out the application form. You do need to write a little personal statement, and your parents do as well, and have some photos of significant things in your life. Once you apply, you are invited to come to interviews on December 6th at White Bear Lake High School. Parents and outbound candidates or applicants all need to come. And after that orientation day, or excuse me, after that interview day, also at that interview day, you'll have an opportunity to meet young people from all over the world, all the countries that are currently having students here in the US. And you'll get to see a little bit about their countries as well to help you make a decision about where you might like to go on exchange if you are accepted. You are notified of acceptance by late December. We try to let you know by Christmas break so that the suspense is over. Okay. Amen. So what's important to know? If you have not already done so, speak to your school counselor or registrar to get your current high school credits approved. You need to have, you talk about your 4-year plan when you start high school. You need to know that a year abroad is not going to delay your graduation. So you want to take a look at your credits. What do you need to get yet before the end of the year? If you're going and coming back for a senior year or junior year, will you get all your credits in and approved? We do not want you to have to graduate late. We want you to graduate on time, but you do need to plan ahead. There are also gap year student opportunities. and that's the year after you graduate from high school before you go to university. If you are planning to go to university, you might want to go ahead and start the application process and then ask about a deferral. And of course, planning ahead means, when will I take my ACT or SAT? Decide with your counselor when it would be most practical and advantageous for you to take your ACT, whether you take it before you go or when you return. Okay, next.
And I'll just comment on this
Sure.
slide as well, because I was a gap year student. I would highly recommend the deferral option if you have the opportunity, because I was someone who applied while I was abroad, and obviously the college application process takes a lot of time, especially if you are working on several different applications and writing several different essays. You also don't have the opportunity to actually attend or tour any of the colleges while you're abroad. So that's something to think about as well if you're a gap year student. However, being a gap year student is advantageous in its own ways, because it's after you have graduated. So you get the opportunity to not have to really worry about credit transfer or, talking to your counselor about approving any of your credits. So it's, pros and cons. But I thought being a gap year student was great. So anyway, I'll toss it back to you later.
Good. Takes
Can
a
I-
lot of stress off, doesn't it, Spencer? To have.
Can I make just a couple quick comments on the year-long exchange program? As for those who are looking into it, obviously you would notice that the costs of the Rotary Youth Exchange program is a lot less than some other programs that are out there. But that doesn't mean that the program is less supportive. As a matter of fact, there's a strong Rotary support system wherever you are on exchange. You're hosted by a Rotary Club, as Spencer has pointed out, and they will provide you with a monthly allowance, and that varies from place to place. Typically, it's about the equivalent of $100 a month. You'll have a youth exchange officer who manages the program with the local Rotary Club. You also have a club counselor who's your liaison and advocate if you run into any tough situations. There's also support at a higher level with the district youth exchange chair, and then there's also the North Star country officers who are monitoring your progress while you're on exchange. So I just wanted to point those things out as far as the long-term program is concerned.
Okay, we have also a short-term program. Our tag for it is the STEP, or the acronym. And there are two parts or two kinds of summer short-term programs. One is a family-to-family program, and the other is a camp or tour. The family-to-family fee is $500, and it works by student A in America being paired with student B in some other country. And those two students share perhaps age, similar interests, and you are matched together, given contact information, and once everything has been approved between the match, you can start communicating, and at that point, it's between the two families. Student A and B will spend 3 weeks to 6 weeks at student A's home, and then they will travel together to student B's home, wherever that may be, and spend another 3 to 6 weeks. The whole family is involved because each family will host while the students are partnered together in the exchange. And again, there are limited involvement with other Rotary activities. However, the family is free to plan whatever activities they would like to do while they are hosting. And then typically, the other family, the paired family, also will do some activities with your student. Camps and tours, again, the $250 fee. And students are accepted to camps on a first come, first served basis. Now, camps occur all over the world. And right now I know of 2 camps that are even occurring during Christmas break, one in Taiwan and one in India. But most of the camps occur over the summer, and they are typically 10 days to 3 weeks. Most are 2-week long. And there's usually an additional fee for the camp costs, and but there is no reciprocation. There is no coming back to the US and hosting. It is just a one-way activity. And both programs, the cost of travel, that means your airfare, is paid for by the family, and insurance is purchased by the family. For the summer programs, the insurance is typically $90 for up to 40 days of insurance. If you go longer, again, a little bit more expensive. And again, that is paid for by the family. There is no visa requirement, so it's just having a passport. Priority deadline is if you have applied by December 6th, you are put in first in line to be matched and first in line to be sent to camps. But applications are accepted through March 1st. And we'll have interviews for the early registrations on December 6th and on a rolling basis afterward. So you'll be notified of each of the interview times if you register or if you apply after the December 6th deadline. Okay?
And obviously, I meant to put 2026
Sure.
here, so for the priority deadline or for the application deadline.
Yeah, that's right. So what you should do next, go to the North Star website and find our application and have it completed by November 15th. The application is, to get in touch with it, if you get in touch with us or to go to the application, you can go to North Star Rotary at, northstarrotary.com, and you will get to our webpage, and all the information is there with drop-down menus saying long-term, short-term exchange, all kinds of information for you and pictures.
Mhm.
So if you want to get in touch with us and you have any additional questions, you can email North Star Rotex. That's these folks up here who have had the experience of going on the program. And then for our general office, it's office@northstarrotary.com. So northstarrotex@gmail.com, and our email is office@northstarrotary.com.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. I think we'll jump right, unless Eric or Fatuma or Lindsay, you have any other things that you want to jump in and add right now before we jump into Q&A? Otherwise, I'm going to answer the one question that's in the chat, or I'll pass it off to someone. And then feel free to either jump in or put anything else in the chat. Okay. So the question says, what were tough experience you had while on exchange and how did you overcome them? This is a great question. Lindsay or Fatuma, do you want to answer this first?
Well, for me, I feel like one of the toughest things I faced was homesickness. Leaving home, I never thought I would miss everybody says I'm not gonna miss my siblings. They're gonna be fine. But then a lot of people are like, trust me, I won't miss them. But then when you get there, you will actually miss your family. And how I overcame that, I would talk to my family once in a while, text my mom, and yeah, you just have to hang in there. Yeah, and then kind of do different activities and avoid thinking about it too much. So be involved with your school, have an after school activity or a Rotary, with your Rotary club. Basically just keep yourself engaged. Yep.
Yeah. Lindsay, do you want to talk about anything either?
No, I'd say my biggest difficulty was also homesickness, and Fatuma kind of covered that. So
Yeah. I think, obviously, everyone on exchange, we're not going to glamorize it. Exchange is a challenging experience, and I'll be clear about that because you're going to a place that is entirely new to you, learning a language that you may not know. You're staying with random people, at first at least, who are very nice and want you to have an amazing experience. And then you're going to school with a different high school, and it's going to be so much difference all at once. But you settle in, things become more familiar over time, and we talk about all of this in our orientation, at our orientations, ways that you can stay adaptable on exchange. And I know, like, when I was on exchange, I definitely had tough times where, like, kind of went through that seasonal depression and, like, you know, overcoming that homesickness and things like that. And you find ways to become independent and get over those things while you're on exchange, whether it's going for a walk, going out to eat, inviting a friend to do something, So that you'll find the experience to be largely one that you build yourself. How do you build a relationship with your host family? I'm going to toss this one to you, to Lindsay and Fatuma.
My favorite thing to do with my host families to try to build the relationship was cook dinner with them, which I feel like sounds kind of niche, but that's what I do with my mom at home. And so that's just kind of what I was used to. Um, but also just like try to communicate with them is probably my biggest advice. Yeah.
Yeah, good advice.
Adding on to what Lindsay said, one of the things that might help a lot get off on the right foot is the first night questions that you'll get during like the orientation. Like do them on the first night, so it's like an icebreaker, so you don't have to be awkward later. So definitely get yourself to push through those on the first night.
Yeah. Can you explain what the first night questions are?
Oh, well, for me, there were questions like, oh, asking your host parents what they would like you to call them, or asking about food, asking about their general like home schedule, like how they run things, and yeah, mostly, yeah.
Yeah. They're a way for you to break the ice and figure out what that home life is like. I'd also just say be present with your family. The best way to get to know them and for them to be involved with you is just to be present with them. So, um, what are the 2-week camps like? Elaine, go for it.
Well, 2-week camps really run the gamut. They can be anything from bicycling across Slovakia to hiking in up the Swiss Alps. It could be a rowing camp in the North Sea. It could be sailing old style Viking type ships again in the North Sea, sailing catamarans off the coast of Spain. These are touring India. The summer or this winter camp is touring India, getting to know the highlights of India. There's been culture camps in Taiwan where you learn about their culture, their customs, or it could just be sightseeing in the area. As I say, they run a whole gamut of experiences, and you can find out more about them by going to our website. We have a list of camps on there. You cannot apply for the camps yourself, however. They will not accept applications unless they come from a Rotary district. So we need to send your application, your completed application. You let us know, I'm interested in the camp I saw about riding horses in Romania. Okay, then I pull up your application and I send the application over, and they will let us know whether there's a space for you in that camp. So very often the camps are a real multinational experience. They're kind of like a mini UN, and you have all those experiences together with people from other countries. So you may be the only American there. Likely you would be. But so that's a little bit about the 2-week camp.
Yeah.
Some of them are even doing archaeological digs in Egypt. I mean, they run the gamut.
Yeah. Great. How does the camp/tour different from the year-long exchange program? Elaine, I'm not sure. You kind of just talked about this, but if you have anything to add, go for
Yeah, it's short, one way. And again, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You get an experience that's significantly limited because it's a 2 week camp, but it is still an experience of a country. It does not encompass the kind of growth and personal development that you will experience and in a long-term exchange.
Yeah. Agreed. Is there a minimum GPA requirement? I can answer this, and Eric, Elaine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the answer is no. Um, the I will say, our program is represented by a lot of high achievers. Typically students who do very well at their schools, but that does not exclude anyone. There's no minimum GPA requirement. We consider your application and your interview holistically. And oftentimes, someone who is really, really excited about a global experience um, uh, is going to be more favorable than someone who is just doing it to look good for college or something like that.
Yeah, I'd say we look for a well-rounded student. We don't, they don't have to be a straight A student. We do like to see involvement in extracurricular activities and, decent grades, but there's a whole process to this that's involved. So we try to evaluate everyone as we see, as they are presented to us.
Hmm. Yeah.
And just if I can add too, there's the expectation that even though it may be a language that you cannot understand, you're expected to be an attentive student and do your best. And if your best isn't really great because you don't know the language yet, by the end of the year you will. But there's there is the expectation that you apply yourself as best you can. And when Spencer says be present, that might be put the phone down and pay attention to what's happening to you and around you in person at the time.
Yeah. Cool. Next question is, can you describe what it's like for a gap year student who graduates from a high school who then goes to another country to repeat a school year? Uh, I can talk about this from my experience because I was a gap year student. So yes, for me, it was basically like doing my senior year of high school over again, which was totally fine with me. Exchange was something I wanted to do for a long time. I saved up for it, I paid for it myself. And I was very involved in my experience because of that, because I wanted to get the most out of it. But like Elaine said, even as a gap year student, you are expected to be involved, attentive, do your homework, be involved in your classroom, etc. Um, and so you will find that apart from, cultural and school differences, you're expected to be a student regardless.
Can I add?
Fatima, did you want? Yeah.
Yeah. I think like high school everywhere is very different. And even though you're like kind of repeating your senior year, they have different traditions that they do at the end of their school years. So all those can be really fun. So it'll be okay. You just have to be a full-time student, and then you get to experience all the different traditions that you didn't know people do for their senior year. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the worst case scenarios that have happened and that we should maybe look out for? Eric and Elaine, I'll let you take that one.
Well, I think if you're struggling and on exchange, I think one of the things is to reach out for help and make the contact and say you're having issues, because typically if things start to drag on and they don't get addressed, they can turn out to be bigger things than when they originally started. I think the biggest thing is to be responsible and just be open to the culture that you're being immersed in. That's a big step towards a successful exchange.
Yeah. Elaine, anything to add? Or are we good? Okay. Other scholarships you can apply to for the long-term program? The answer is yes, but they are limited. Eric and Elaine, do you want to talk about that?
Believe there are some designated scholarships, but we have a limited amount of money, and depending on how many students apply, may impact how many scholarships and how large the scholarships are. So, you know, for a ballpark figure, $1,000 perhaps. So we believe that you have to have some investment in this program yourself and be somewhat supporting. So, but we do offer some help.
Yeah. I've also known people who have spoke with their local Rotary Club and basically went to them and said, I'm really interested in this experience. I would love to do this, but I have a financial need. And I've known people who have gotten scholarships through their local Rotary Club as well. And that is an option that you could pursue if that was of interest as well. When doing the short-term program, does it help us with our education, family to family, or campus?
Not sure what the campus means, but you know, the short-term exchange is going to expose you
Or
to different parts of the world, different people, different lifestyles. Case in point, one young freshman came back from her short-term exchange and just had a whole list of things that were different and things that were the same and things that she never thought about in America, much because being in another country opened her eyes to the differences. And so you will grow, you will learn, you will appreciate the differences, but again, you will not become fluent in a language. You know, it's not the same as the long term, but it is still a good program.
I'll add to that because my daughter went on a long-term or a short-term exchange before she did a long-term exchange. She did a short-term exchange to a small village in the mountains in Ecuador where almost no one spoke English. And she was there 4 weeks, and that helped her get a really strong base of her knowledge in Spanish. So it can certainly help you with regard to your education.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the written application and interview? Lindsay, do you want to talk about this a little bit too, since you're a little bit more recent from the experience?
Yeah, so I think the application's like 5 pages long. One thing I wanted to add earlier is make sure you put a good photo of yourself on the application because that's the photo that your host families see before they meet you. Um, it, I don't really know how to explain all of it. It basically just you submit like your transcripts from school, you have to write a little thing about yourself and kind of why you want to do exchange. And then your parents write something about you saying like why they think you'd be a good exchange student. Yeah, the interview is with, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 2 people who are um country officers. And then there's a Rotex who is also part of that interview. And they ask you some questions just like, why do you want to go on exchange? Um, just questions about yourself to see if you'd be a good fit for the program, I think.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's good. Eric or Elaine?
Well,
I'll just go ahead, Elaine.
parents are also part of the interview, at least at the beginning, and how the parents are going to support and handle the situation. Excuse me, and I'm gonna let Eric take over because I have a tickle.
All right. Okay, well, first to double back to the application, it's mostly information, general information about the applicant and the applicant's family. There are two letters basically of introduction that you put together that are that will be shared with the potential host family in the host country. There's some photos that you insert into the application. So that's the initial application. And then there's some other documents that you'll have to submit along the way. As far as the interview, yes, you'll be interviewing with a couple of youth exchange leaders, and the Rotax is part of that. Again, the parents are part of a small part of the interview process, but the interview day is a really interesting day because we have our inbound students there, and they have a country fair where they tell you about their country and basically sell you on the idea of going to their country on exchange. It's all that day is a very busy day. It's a really an international experience, and I think it's certainly something that would look forward to.
Oh, what was it like going through the language learning process? I can speak to this as well, but it is it can be difficult. I mean, it's not easy. And I think that especially when you're in a, when you are surrounded by people who also speak English, it can be very easy to get lenient with your language learning process. So it does take some resiliency to um, try to get comfortable, uh, you know, getting people to speak the language with you, especially if they're more comfortable with English. Um, but there are tons of resources online now for language learning. And then especially when you're actually in the country itself, there is no better place to learn the language. Um, Either through, maybe your host family doesn't speak English, and then you're forced to be immersed in the experience. Um, or you do a lot of language learning online, or you knew the language before you went. So I don't know, Lindsay, what was it like for you?
Okay, so my Spanish knowledge before I went to Spain was 2 years of high school Spanish class in a smaller school district, so not great. Then my first host family spoke fluent English, but the difference between my third host family also spoke fluent English, but the difference between the two is my third host family pushed me more to just speak Spanish with them, and my first host family did not. So that's why my biggest advice is always try your hardest to speak the language, because I did not do that for the first 3 months of my exchange. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets. Um, so yeah. But it's difficult, but in the long run, you'll appreciate it, I guess.
Cool. No, thank you. I appreciate it. So for the sake of time, there's a lot of questions left, so I just want to make sure we get through everything. So this is like rapid fire. Um, how soon do we know about the country and language for the STEP program?
Is on a rolling basis, and we have your applications ready. We contact our partners, exchange partners, and it's basically like bargaining. I have a 17-year-old girl who likes to play piano, sings, and ride bike. What do you have? And I say, I have, a 17-year-old girl. We take a look at profiles. It can happen as quickly as a day. Or you could be sitting in the queue waiting for a partner to be offered for a couple, 3, 4 weeks. But we've all but one occasion been able to find a partner for every student. So just need to be be ready and watching emails because we communicate with email and with email attachments.
Great. Also, I think I skipped a question here. What if your host family doesn't like you? I didn't mean to skip over it, but the I think it's natural for exchange students to, you know, be on good terms, be on, be more, have better experiences with certain families that they have on exchange, for example. And I think that's natural. Like you may get along with one family more than another. And I think the part of the experience is getting different cultural experiences. Um, and but the issue, I think that's the issue with thinking that you'll have a host family that doesn't like you, maybe puts something into the universe that maybe doesn't exist. If that like makes sense. Like you don't want to like manifest it in a way. I know that's like a bad thing that like that doesn't like explain myself very well, but you know, um, it, as someone who's living with their family, you can do a lot to um, you know, be to be adaptable in those exchange experiences.
Can I add to that a little bit? Case, don't hesitate to talk to your club counselor or your YEO about the situation. Those are people who can perhaps help bridge that communication gap that might be, or help explain, what it is you're missing or what they are missing about you. Suppose you get a family, you're really outgoing and you like to talk to people all the time and they are very quiet and very private. Count on your on your counselors and your YEO to give you some advice and help you navigate those differences.
Mhm. Thank you. You said that a lot better than I did. So, how does the Rotary program prepare you to travel to a country that speaks different language for the year-long exchange? Are there expedited language courses, etc.? Um, yes, short answer. Eric, do you want to add to that?
Well, we have the Pimsleur language program that we've used for many years, but that shouldn't be your only language course. You should be learning through other things, through movies, through television, through other language programs that are out there. It's something that that you can use many resources in addition to the Pimsleur course.
Would it be possible to do a Zoom meeting with your host family before you leave? Yes, and I think it's encouraged, highly encouraged to do that.
Yes. Yes.
You will know your host family in advance to you leaving. You don't just show up and meet a random person. So okay, nothing to add there. For the year program, are there countries where you stay with just one host family? Um, it's not country specific. It's more rare that you would ever have one or two host families. I will say my experience, I only had one host family, and that was like a result of availability and things like that with some of the host families in my area. Uh, that was a rare experience. I think I was the only person in my like 55 person exchange group that stayed with one host family the whole year. So
Did you like them and they like you, Spencer?
yes, I have also gone back to visit them and we are on great terms. So,
Good.
what happens if you don't know the language of the country you are placed in? Lindsay, Fatuma, do you want to add anything?
You learn it, I would say. Is that but you do the language courses before you go. You can find movies or shows to watch in that language. But yeah, I would say you try your best to learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, adding on to what Lindsay said. I didn't have to learn a language because I've been speaking English since I was young. But a lot of other exchange students that I talked to, like, don't get discouraged by the fact that you have to learn a language because you're gonna appreciate it so much. like even halfway through your exchange, you're gonna come back and be happy that you can speak Portuguese or Spanish or yeah. But yeah, like Lindsay said, you gotta push yourself to learn the language, and it'll be
Yeah. I would just add, have an open mindset going into the experience. You have the ability to place your priority countries on the interview day that you'd like to go to. Um, a lot, you may not know the languages of the countries that you're choosing, and that's totally okay. You gain a lot from this experience, and every language is rich with its own experience. So I had no idea how to speak Polish before I went on exchange, and I fell in love with it. So um, yeah. How does assimilation back to school work after a year-long exchange? Lindsay?
Yeah, this is a me question because I was a junior when I went. Um, Honestly, I was highly encouraged after getting back from exchange to do PSEO and like college classes in person at a college while in high school, and I chose not to do that. And I would highly encourage people to do that just because being back in high school after doing such a huge thing as going to school in another country, being back in your American high school is difficult. But also, if you have a big friend group, it might not be as difficult. Um, but I did not. So,
And it totally depends.
yeah, it
I've heard
really depends on
I've
who
totally
you
heard
are.
stories like, you know, it was really hard for me to come back because I really missed my exchange. And I've also heard stories like, oh my gosh, it was so easy to come back. And it totally depends on uh, you know, how how you involve yourself when you come back, and
Yeah.
maybe you can find those things that you really missed about your country and find ways to involve like your family with them here, and bring back those experiences to your friends and things like that. But yes, we do confront, we call it reverse culture shock as part of our training in the program. When you come back, we have something called Rebound Weekend that you can be involved with as someone who just returned. And it's led by Rotex, so people who have also been involved with the program. And we talk about our experiences and how you can learn and grow from that as well. So I know for the sake, it's already 8 p.m. Uh, if we want to round out these questions, I'm happy to do so. If you need to drop off, go for it, or stay on if you want to keep hearing from more information. Does that sound okay, Eric and Elaine? Okay, because there's several questions left. Um, when you arrive in the country, will there be someone waiting for you? Of course, there will be. Um, you are not in this experience alone. You will most likely be picked up by your host family or someone from the Rotary organization, such as like a club counselor or a youth exchange officer who can transport you to your host family. So for me, my host family picked me up. They were like waiting with a bunch of signs and it was very cute. So um, Lindsay or Fatuma, what was your experience?
Yeah, my host family was there and my Rotary counselor was there. Um, and they all had signs and it was really cute and they had little hats and yeah.
yeah, those were the same for me. I had three host families, and they were all there, and then most of the members from the Rotary Club were there, and they had signs and the flags and everything, and it was really nice. Yeah.
What month do year-long exchange students typically leave? August, typically?
August or September. I left beginning of September.
Okay.
The only change to that would be if they were going to a Southern Hemisphere country that starts their exchanges in January. And I think I don't recall which ones are doing that at this point, although New Zealand, I believe, is one. I'm not sure if
Australia.
Argent Argentina is set up that way.
And South Africa, if
Yep.
when we've exchanged with South Africa.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would be only a few students, if a few. What percentage of students who applied in North Star Exchange are rejected?
In
Seldom.
recent years, it's been very few. And usually it's been a situation where we've referred the student to do short-term exchange and reapply for long-term. So I think, there's been very few rejections in the past few years.
Are there any language learning classes we can take if we do a long-term exchange? Before you leave for exchange, we, like Eric said, have Pimsleur, which is a primarily like auditory resource that we have for all of the students. And then you're also welcome to set up a relationship with Rotex. You can talk to me, Lindsay, or Fatuma about that. Please email our Rotex email if you, or talk to a Rotex at at any of the orientations about setting up like language learning opportunities with them. And then if you're on exchange, I know, sometimes you can talk to your club, you can talk to your school, you can talk to your host family about the best way to get involved with language learning classes. I'm not sure. Lindsay, did you have anything that you did while you were abroad?
I was put in a Spanish for Foreigners class at my school. It was a lot of Ukrainian students that had moved to Spain, and then there was a teacher who was Spanish, and he would teach us kind of like basic grammar stuff, and that was super helpful for me. But that was something I kind of had to ask around a lot for.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. What's the difference between the interviews happening on November 19th and the interview on December 6th? I don't think there's anything on November 19th, so just December 6th. And then if you apply for a summer program or camp, you may be interviewed after December 6th if you applied after that date.
And I'm
Yeah,
wondering if they're referring to a club interview or an interview with their sponsoring club, or are they confusing the November 15th deadline
The
with the November
application
19th?
deadline with,
Yeah, the application deadline,
yeah.
get the paperwork, the initial paperwork in by the 15th. You don't have to
Hmm.
get all the medical reports and things in. We'll do that later, but just that first set of questions and that are on the website.
Okay. There's a club interview on November 19th, someone said. So I don't know if you want to explain that really quick.
well, just so they know what that is, clubs will often interview the students they sponsor as an initial screening, and then they send the information typically on to North Star for the district interviews. But it's typically a first step, and as I said, just to screen some initial applicants, get to know the applicants, because there is some connection between the club and the applicants that they'll want to keep in play.
Plus, it's good for the interviews on the 6th. Many of the same questions that will be asked, like,
Yeah.
did you find out about Rotary? And
Elaine, don't give that away.
what's the biggies, okay? Surprise.
Now we have to go change the questions.
The next question is, how do you apply for the scholarships? Eric or Elaine?
Well, once you let's see, there's something that'll come out from Sarah on that after the interviews, and the selections, then there'll be information that'll come with regard to what the scholarships being available.
First, get accepted, get apply, get accepted, and then the opportunity to apply for a scholarship will be
Yep.
made available to you.
Yep.
The website says that the age limit in many countries is 18 and a half. If I decide to do this as a gap year, I will be 19. How do I find out which countries accept a person starting the year as a 19-year-old, particularly looking for a French-speaking country opportunity? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Can you be 19 before you leave for exchange?
There are certain
You-
countries you can.
You can turn 19, I believe. You can
Well-
turn 19 while you're in country. But it's a rare country that will take a 19-year-old going in. We checked
Well-
on that for an interview.
The other thing that is happening right now is we're getting updated information on the age ranges for countries. So the website may not have the most up-to-date information because we're just collecting at this point, because that's part of our process. So that the countries that are available to you you'll find that out on the district interview or after the day after let's see, I think on the day of the district interview or the day after, when you make your selection.
If you know an exchange student whose family is a host family where you want them to go, can you ask to be put with them? No.
It's North Star is not in charge of placement with the host family in the host country. That's the host country and the host Rotary district that makes that decision. So we don't have control over that.
When does the application open and how do we find it on the website? I will send it out after the meeting, but the application's already open. So make sure to have it in by November 15th.
Sarah has the
Um,
next line.
oh, it's Sarah. Okay, got it.
Sarah
Thank
already
you,
answered.
Sarah.
Yep,
Um,
NorthstarRotary.com.
okay, last two questions and then we're wrapping up. What are class schedules like in the school in another country and what input do you have? Lindsay?
Really depends on the country. In Spain, it was different. Monday and Wednesday was the same, and like Tuesday, Thursday, Friday was the same. But it was, I don't know how to explain it. Um, it's just different than how they do it here, where you have different classes kind of each day. Um, and I had like elective classes, but then most of my classes were in one classroom with the same students all day. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
It does. And
Okay.
I mean, each country is going to have a totally different look. I
Mhm.
mean, European countries themselves have different types of class schedules versus Asian countries versus countries in the Southern Hemisphere. So you're going to have a different experience everywhere you go. But your class schedule, I mean, essentially, while it might be different, it'll look uh, you'll have some uh, you'll receive it at the beginning of the year. Your host family or someone from your Rotary organization will help you set it up, whether that be, for example, in European countries where you get to choose your track that you take. So you might take like a science track or a humanities track, something like that. So you get some input into those, and your class schedule will be totally dependent on where you go. And then the last question is, so do we pick our country or is it randomly selected? Um, Go for it, Eric Early.
Okay, I'll start. It's so when you go to the district interviews, that's when the country fair is that I talked about, where the inbound students, basically try to convince you to go to their country. And the after that, you'll have an opportunity either, I think it's the next day, that Sarah will send out a questionnaire where you can submit your preferences. And you will submit the countries that you prefer to go to, and we will try our darndest to place you in one of those preferred countries. So that's generally the way the process works.
They also ask you in the interview kind of what you're hoping for, like what you do and don't want with a country or like with a year-long exchange.
Okay. I know I said last question, but we have
There's a couple more there.
Okay. Last two, and then the rest you'll have to email us about. Okay. Do most countries offer optional tours? Elaine.
Okay, most European countries provide what they call Euro tour or some sort of a tour of the surrounding area. We do the same at the end of our tour or at the end of our year for our students. So you just need to watch and listen, pay attention to what your district or your club might offer you. But yes, there are again, just like we offer optional tours and trips for our students and trips for all of the exchange students, you can count on some of those things taking place in your country as well. Spencer or Lindsay, why don't you share with us what your favorite was in your country when you were there? Do you have a tour?
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I went on Euro tour and I really liked it. It is an extra expense. But they'll talk about that more once you're like in your country on exchange. You get more information on Euro tour if you are in a European country. You get to go to like, I think it's 10, 11 different countries in Europe. And that was really a fun experience for me because I had never been outside of the US before going on exchange.
Yeah. Because I was also in Europe, I also got the opportunity to do a Euro tour as well, which if you have the funds for it, I mean, it was an amazing experience. They send all of the exchange students in your district on a guided tour. Mine was across like Western Europe. And every country has um, tours that are offered through the youth exchange experience. They're totally optional, just at an extra charge. And on top of that, you will have experiences throughout the year in your country with your group of exchange students, and those are not at an additional charge. So you'll be able to travel to different cities to meet exchange students, and then you'll usually do cultural experiences together. You'll have time to hang out for like a weekend or something like that. So those are also incorporated into the program as well. Okay. I hope I haven't taken too much of your time, but I just want to thank everyone for coming. And if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to either one of these emails. Obviously, if you have just more general program information, questions, or anything along those lines, please reach out to our office. And then if you have questions about language learning or the cultural experience or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to the program alumni email. But it was great. I really appreciate all the questions. So thanks for your engagement.